Pages of a modern fairy tale.
She's got a successful career. She's living in one of the most vibrant cities in the world.
He was charming and exciting and loving, everything she always wanted in a partner.
They became a power couple. They'd make the perfect team.
But a foreboding call turns this romance story into a bone-chilling thriller.
I just got word that something horrible has happened.
He opened a suitcase and he discovered a letter, a typed letter.
It was clear to all of us that something wasn't right.
Detectives find themselves thrown into a case more sensational than most.
He was trying to turn this whole situation into an action-adventure novel.
It was very strange. I've never come across anything like that before in my career.
And with two sides to every story, it's up to investigators to determine which one to believe.
She found out he was hiding a secret.
When you get emotion involved, anything can happen.
Jealousy took over, and at some point it was uncontrollable.
There's an old saying, if somebody shows you who they are, you should believe them.
Jersey. It's a peaceful night in this upscale community, less than 20 miles west of Manhattan.
Montclair, New Jersey is a quiet, tree-lined street town that's considered a suburb of New York City.
It's very affluent. So there's a lot of homes that are over $1 million, and there's not a lot of crime.
But just before midnight, local police receive a cryptic tip.
At approximately 11:45 p.m., the police in Montclair, New Jersey, get a phone call from a man named Doug Pearson.
Montclair Police. Hello, I live in Pennsylvania. I just got word that something horrible, potentially, has happened there in Montclair, and no one is there to call in.
What happened?
I am not certain, but it sounds like there may be a murder victim there.
He said a woman by the name of Angela Bledsoe could be inside of a home in Montclair, dead.
Doug gives dispatch an address, and within minutes, a team of Montclair police officers are en route to the residence.
I responded to the scene, a larger single-family dwelling, mid-block on a quiet residential street.
Police enter the home with guns drawn, not sure what they're gonna walk into. However, when they flipped the lights on, their fears were confirmed.
The body, Miss Bledsoe, was on the floor of the kitchen.
There was quite a bit of blood where she was laying, and some of that blood had been there for a while.
Officers on scene confirm the caller's tip to headquarters.
Our units are going to be tied up for a little while. This just turned into a homicide investigation.
This one was the first homicide that I had been called about in my acting prosecutor position. And it was a name that was not unfamiliar to me, Angela Bledsoe.
Angela had a stellar reputation in her community.
In fact, 44-year-old Angela Bledsoe had achieved the kind of success that's envied by many.
She was a graduate of Florida A&M, a historically Black university in Tallahassee.
She was also a part of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, an organization that focuses on bettering the community.
She seems to have been a person who found her way through solid programs and grew to be quite a successful young woman.
After graduating in 1997, Angela got right to work.
She accepted a high-paying position in New York City as a financial consultant at a multinational bank.
She was so successful in her 20s that she was making more money than her parents had in a lifetime, practically. And they were so supportive of her.
She keeps her eyes on the prize, and for her, the prize is $1 million plus brownstone in Brooklyn before the age of 30, which is quite a rare task.
She continued to climb the corporate ladder, becoming a financial consultant and analyst at various banks and insurance agencies.
But as she reached her mid-30s, Angela began to feel like something was missing.
She wanted to find love. She wanted to enjoy all that life had given to her with someone special.
And in the spring of 2008, she'd find just that.
Angela, hey, great to see you.
Likewise, Mr. Ray.
Please, call me James.
James Ray was an accomplished Manhattan attorney. He specialized in insurance.
They first met when James hired Angela to run his insurance brokerage. He felt that with her business savvy and his experience in law and insurance, they would make the perfect team.
Wow, this is great. I love your ideas.
Thank you.
55-year-old James also had an impressive past before getting his MBA.
Anything that he put his hands on, he did very well. Mr. Ray was a police officer for a short time, served in the Marine Corps, and was also a black belt in a martial art.
Listen, I have another meeting to get to, but how about we continue this conversation later? Over dinner, perhaps?
I would like that.
Great.
Along comes this successful man whose story is a lot like hers. So for her, it feels like, hello, Daddy.
The two soon became great partners in the boardroom and the bedroom.
Despite their 11-year age difference, Angela found James to be charming and exciting and loving, everything she always wanted in a partner.
They would go golfing on weekends, take trips to Martha's Vineyard, and would rub elbows with some of New York's most elite Black community. They became a power couple.
And in 2012, the dynamic duo became a party of three when they welcomed a beautiful baby girl.
Angela enjoyed being a mother, and James enjoyed doting on Angela and their daughter.
As their daughter grew older, James convinced Angela to sell her Brooklyn brownstone and move into his 6-bedroom home in Montclair, New Jersey.
Montclair feels like home. It feels like backyard. Life feels easier. And for a young woman who's probably been on the go since she was in high school to achieve, this probably felt like a place of peace.
But now, Montclair police have responded to a home that's anything but peaceful.
For something like this to happen in Montclair, it's very unheard of. You had a very well-known, likable person who Angela was. This one kind of hit home.
There was a multitude of indicators that were popping up that just didn't settle right with me and the other investigators.
We all had that gut feeling from the moment we walked in the door that there was something wrong here.
By the fall of 2018, Angela Bledsoe and James Ray had skyrocketed to the top of New York's social scene.
Angela was a powerhouse woman, and after meeting James Ray, Angela finally had someone to share her success with.
But on October 22nd, their idyllic Montclair home is swarming with police.
They have found Angela dead, and based on what they see, she was murdered. Angela had been shot 3 times, once in the chest, once in the back, and once in the head.
Police also discover a 4th shot that missed the mark.
There's a clock laying in the kitchen sink, and that clock had fallen from a hook, and it had stopped at 11:14.
It fell into the sink, and as it hit the sink, the battery popped out. Therefore, it memorialized the exact time that the incident occurred. On the floor is where this large pool of blood was, and on top of that pool of blood was this 9mm handgun.
Let's back that up. Let's find out if it's our murder weapon. Yes, sir.
About 5 or 6 feet away from her is a little stool, and on top of that stool is a phone.
It could belong to the victim, or it could belong to the killer.
Okay, let's back this up, too.
In the adjoining living room, investigators discover even more evidence.
We found a projectile with some blood on it embedded into the love seat. Additionally, we found a handprint or swipe of blood on the armrest of the love seat and the adjacent couch.
The crime scene itself makes it appear as though there's been a tussle.
Detectives are also drawn to the coffee table by the sofa.
On top of the table, we could clearly see empty gun cases and a cleaning kit.
There was 2 handgun boxes on the coffee table, and there was a Springfield XD9 pistol on one of them.
3 .45 caliber shell casings were placed standing up on end, side by side, inside of one of the gun boxes. That is odd, extremely peculiar.
Notably absent from the scene is the gun that matches the 45mm casings.
Hey, have we found a .45 caliber?
No, sir.
We found 9mm pistols. Where's the .45 caliber pistol?
And where is the owner of the home? Angela's boyfriend, James Ray.
I've probably been on over 100 homicide scenes, and this one, it just seemed a little eerie.
It was clear to all of us that something wasn't right.
In their search for answers, detectives circle back around to the 911 caller, a Pennsylvania resident named Doug Pearson.
He was the one that alerted the Montclair Police Department of what had taken place. We bring him back to our headquarters where a formal interview was conducted.
They wanted to know how he knew that Angela was dead.
Well, it all started last night around 6 p.m.
Doug explains that he got an unexpected visit from a family member.
That individual was Angela Bledsoe's boyfriend, James Ray.
Hey, how's it going, man? I'm good. But listen, I got a favor to ask.
He asked him for an unusual request, and that was to keep his 6-year-old daughter for a week.
Angela and I are slammed with a big work emergency. It means a lot to us if you can watch her.
Doug was family, so he wanted to help, so he reluctantly agreed.
No problem. Thanks, man, I owe you. I got all her stuff packed. She's waiting in the car. I'll go grab her.
His behaviors were erratic and unusual.
It seems odd, but I never had a reason to doubt him. My wife and I is always happy to help our family. But then
what?
Later that night, they were getting the child ready for bed. He opened a suitcase that was left by James Ray, and he discovered a letter, a typed letter.
Honey!
This letter broke the case wide open.
4-year-old financial advisor Angela Bledsoe have just learned that her attorney boyfriend, James Ray, was exhibiting strange behavior the night before she was found dead.
He asked a family member, Doug Pearson, to watch their 6-year-old daughter without much explanation.
And when Doug and his wife were getting Angela and James's daughter ready for bed, they made an alarming discovery.
Honey, this suitcase that James has left includes this ominous note where James confesses to murdering Angela.
He confessed to killing Angela in their Montclair home. But according to James, it wasn't a cold-blooded murder. It was self-defense.
take a look for yourself.
As detectives read over James's letter, it's clear that his once happy relationship with Angela had taken a dark turn.
James claimed that they would fight all the time and that Angela was becoming violent.
He indicated in the letter that she was cheating.
The letter alleges that on the morning of October 22nd, the situation came to a head.
James claimed he was cleaning his handgun when they got into a heated argument.
He said she grabbed a handgun from off the table and pointed at him. That put him in fear, and he grabbed a gun and he fired at her.
According to the letter, James was afraid no one would believe his story, so he decided to get out of town.
He sets up all of these pieces to make sure his daughter is safe.
He made reference also to checks that were left behind in the suitcase, that it was to go to their young daughter.
And he just, he flees.
James Ray was on the run.
So, did he leave anything else behind?
Yeah, he left his cell phone.
Doug was able to turn James's cell phone into the police. So they suspect the phone located at the crime scene belonged to Angela.
After speaking with Doug, authorities issue a BOLO for James and his vehicle to law enforcement agencies in the area, describing him as potentially armed and dangerous.
We had his phone, so tracking his phone was out of the picture. So our next thing was, where's his car? This has to be with this car. So we do a bunch of law enforcement checks on his car. That comes up negative.
While deputies search for James and his vehicle, detectives take a closer look at the cell phone they found at the crime scene.
They confirmed it belonged to Angela Bledsoe.
After working with the carrier to unlock the phone, detectives make a surprising discovery.
There was text messages in Angela's phone that were discovered between Angela and a male friend.
James was right about one thing. Angela was having an affair.
The two had been sexting, and it seemed as though they had met up on several occasions.
Hoping to learn more, detectives reach out to the man Angela had been corresponding with, 44-year-old Leon Holmes.
He lives more than 1,000 miles away in Orlando, Florida.
We identified who that individual was, and we made contact with him. He indicated that he was made aware that Angela was dead.
I found out through a mutual friend, and I can't believe she's gone.
On the call, Leon confirms he'd been in a romantic relationship with Angela.
Leon tells investigators they had met as students together at FAMU in the 90s, and after graduation had gone their separate ways.
But a year earlier, in October 2017, Leon says they rekindled the feelings they'd had in college.
Leon says that he reconnected with Angela at a FAMU homecoming reunion. Over happy hour drinks, the two felt a spark and decided to stay in touch.
Leon confirmed that he and Angela had in fact been spending several weekends together between Orlando, where he lived, and New York City.
But according to Leon, he had no idea the connection he and Angela were building was actually an illicit affair.
He thought Angela was single.
Until recently, I had no idea she was in another relationship.
Leon says he didn't find out until October 20th, 2 days before Angela's body was discovered.
Hello?
I don't know who the hell you think you are.
Who is this?
James had discovered text messages between Angela and Leon on her phone.
Shortly after, Mr. Ray contacted the individual and threatened him.
I'm coming for you, man, if you don't stay away from Angela.
Listen, it's not what you...
Think I'm an idiot? Huh? I'm coming for you.
Leon was so frightened by James's rage that as soon as the call ended, he contacted Angela to warn her.
He's concerned for her life because James's behavior and his threats toward him made him feel menaced, and he states away. Angela lives with this man.
Why didn't you tell me?
When Leon asked Angela if her and James are really living together, she confirmed that they were, but implied that the relationship was coming to an end.
Based on what detectives were piecing together, it seemed that as soon as James realized that Angela was having an affair, it really pushed him over the edge. And it seems that that may have driven him to commit murder.
Thank you so much, Leon. And if we need anything else, we'll contact you.
After speaking with Leon, detectives are more eager than ever to track down James Ray, and soon they'll get their chance.
Montclair detectives receive a tip. James's car had been spotted at Newark Liberty International Airport.
At that time, myself, Detective Muhammad, responded there, where we located the vehicle in the parking deck in Newark Airport. It was parked, locked. We could see inside on the dashboard that there was a parking ticket with the date and time.
The ticket shows James had entered the lot around the same time that the police responded to the homicide scene at his house.
The ticket in the window that we can clearly see indicated like 12:01. His car entered that lot.
But frustratingly, there are no clues to where James went next.
Once we conducted a search of the entire vehicle, there was no items of evidential value found. We did canvass the parking lot for surveillance video, however, there was none.
The fact that James left his car at an international airport heightens concerns.
Not only is he clearly no longer in the tri-state area, he could be anywhere.
Montclair police decide to recruit help from the FBI.
There's a procedure that you go through with the FBI that you call red tag, someone that might be on the run.
A red notice had to be served through Interpol.
While they wait for leads, Detectives reach out to Angela's friends and family, hoping for more information that could help them find James.
As investigators sit down with Angela's loved ones, they're still mourning her loss.
But they also drop a bombshell.
Angela found out that James was keeping a secret.
He had a whole other family on the side.
For 48 hours, law enforcement agencies across the globe have been searching for 55-year-old James Ray, a Manhattan attorney wanted for shooting his girlfriend, Angela Bledsoe, to death.
He's left his cell phone behind, turned off. He dumped his car. He's nowhere to be found.
James also left behind a confession, claiming Angela's murder was an act of self-defense. But her loved ones aren't buying it.
According to Angela's friends and family, the only one that needed help being defended was Angela.
Well, it took us a while to realize what was really going on.
When they first got together, Angela and James were a match made in heaven. They were both successful Manhattanites making a name for themselves.
But the family explains that not long into their relationship, Angela and James hit a major bump in the road.
Angela found out that James was hiding a secret. He was married with 2 adult children.
That was the first red flag. Angela was shocked.
Normally, Angela would never date a married man, but she was so smitten with James, she decided to stick through the relationship.
And when Angela found out she was expecting a child of her own, the couple came to a crossroads.
She was essentially locked into their relationship, so she pushed James to end things with his wife so that they could be a family.
Angela has done too much, worked too hard to build up her name, life, reputation, and career to just be the side chick.
Eventually, James followed through and divorced his wife.
Angela moved in with James in his Montclair home, the same home that he had shared with his first wife.
But according to Angela's family, soon after she moved in with James, things started to change.
That's when he started showing his true colors.
Slowly but surely, she started to reveal that the relationship was not a healthy relationship.
Who's that?
It's just my sister.
You must really think I'm stupid to believe that. You're a liar.
She revealed to them that James Ray was very controlling. He spoke down to her in front of their child. He was demeaning towards her.
There's an old saying, if somebody shows you who they are, you should believe them.
Things reached a tipping point when James was able to confirm that there had been a physical relationship between Angela and Leon Holmes.
I already read the messages. I know you've been running around on me down in Florida.
You know what? I'm out of here.
You know what? You're gonna regret this. Both of you.
Yeah.
James had threatened to beat her and Leon up.
She ultimately made a decision that she was gonna abandon this relationship and seek out a better life for her and her child.
According to the family, in mid-October, Angela had bravely communicated her plans with James.
She'd sent him a text message that she was leaving the relationship, that she has tried everything she can to preserve it, and she was going to be moving on.
And on October 22nd, the day she was killed, Angela put her plan into action.
She was taking the steps to move out.
She makes an appointment with a realtor to see some houses for she and her daughter.
And he was aware that she had been house hunting.
Angela's family also scoffs at the claims James made in his confession letter, that Angela pulled a gun on him first.
No, no way.
Loved ones all confirmed that Angela was a non-violent person.
It appears that James might have been trying to paint the picture of this angry black woman, but her family paints a completely different picture that seen no signs of any kind of aggression. It just wasn't who she was.
Her family was telling her to get out, and she unfortunately got out, just not in the way that she had hoped. She was removed from that home in a body bag.
Yet after a week with no sign of James, investigators begin to worry that he'll never face the consequences for what he's done.
Investigators are starting to become worried that the case will turn cold.
But on October 28, 2018, they finally catch a big break.
This is Rangers.
I remember it like it was yesterday. I received a phone call from the FBI, and they stated, hey, I think we have your guy. He's on a plane from Mexico City to Cuba. Right now, he's in the air. We're trying to get agents in Cuba so when the plane lands, we could arrest him.
That was an aspect to this case that I didn't expect, that I had never dealt with. While we've extradited people from other places, Cuba certainly wasn't one of them.
For decades, our relationship with Cuba has not been a good one. The fact that we're doing the work to extradite him back is a very big deal.
Fortunately, the plan works.
James was taken into FBI custody after his plane landed.
We were notified that he was coming back on November the 6th at Teterboro Airport, where we go and we wait for him.
Welcome back, James. Are you ready to talk?
But after the FBI hands him over to Montclair police, James refuses to give a statement.
He had this with him.
Oh, okay. But thanks. He can go back to holding if he's not ready to talk.
Okay.
And from that point, we collect his personal effects, which was a large duffel bag.
And inside the duffel bag is a shocking new piece of evidence.
It was very strange. I've never come across anything like that before in my career.
He was trying to turn this whole situation into an action-adventure novel.
Apprehended fugitive James Ray after he murdered his girlfriend, Angela Bledsoe, and fled to Cuba.
James Ray was public enemy number 1.
He gets to the police station and he refuses to offer a statement.
However, after going through his belongings, police discover something just as valuable.
Inside that bag, we're able to locate a 20-page manifesto that he had handwritten. It was very strange. I've never come across anything like that before in my career.
In it, James wrote about everything that happened, as if it was some adventure novel. He even said it deserved to be published and the proceeds should go to his daughter.
The manifesto, entitled On the Move, features main characters named Jack and Mousie instead of James and Angela.
It was a little odd reading the manifesto in another name and like a third-type person.
In the manifesto, James echoes a similar version of events as those in the confession letter.
The differences between the typed letter that James Ray left behind and the manifesto that we recovered off of him when he was returned to the United States is that the typed letter was short and it left out a lot of detail. The handwritten journal, it was clear. He spent a lot of time thinking about what he was going to say.
James sticks to the claim that a heated argument had erupted while he was trying to clean his guns. But this time, his story is slightly different. He claims the bickering with Angela started after dropping their daughter off at school that morning.
After their heated discussion, they went their separate ways. Angela said she had errands to run.
You know what? I'm out of here.
So he felt it was a perfect time to clean all of his guns. So he removed him from his safe and he brought him down, placed him on the glass coffee table in the living room.
He gets up to go to the bathroom.
When he walked back into the living room, James claims Angela was sitting on the couch holding one of his guns.
She rants and raves about how things aren't working.
Be careful with that.
I can't do this anymore, James.
According to James, that's when his military training kicked in, and he picked up another weapon, firing in Angela's direction as he ran for cover.
Like out of some Rambo movie, it becomes a shootout where he's in survival mode.
He claims that he ran into the bathroom and hid.
And he says it feels like he was there for an eternity, and he comes out because it was quiet.
When he came out, he saw a trail of blood leading into the kitchen. He goes into the kitchen and he sees Angela on the floor. When she sees him, she raises up the gun to shoot at him.
He goes into fight or flight mode and just shoots wildly because he's got to defend himself, because she's been there, poised and ready to just take him out.
When all the dust settles, he claims he goes up and checks on her. She's not breathing.
He goes into what do I do next mode, which then is when he decides to pack up his stuff, to pack up his daughter's stuff, to assemble all of the things that ended up in the suitcase that Doug had.
He then retrieved his daughter from school and went to meet Doug Pearson.
After dropping his daughter off, he then went to Newark Airport.
James knew police would be looking for his car, so he abandoned it at the Newark Airport.
From Newark Airport, he then took a taxi to Philadelphia, where he stayed a couple days. And during this whole time, from what the letter stated, he was in possession of the murder weapon.
He stayed at night living amongst the homeless, and then began to meticulously dismantle the gun and distribute it around town so that the gun in its entirety couldn't be found.
From there, James hitched rides traveling southbound, eventually landing in Texas.
He then takes a bus from Texas to Mexico, where he would have been under the radar. It is in Mexico that he takes a flight from Mexico to Cuba, which then sends off the bells and whistles.
When detectives finish reading James's manifesto, they're stunned.
We all looked at each other afterward and say, listen, there's no way that his story from the manifesto that she was the aggressor is in any way, shape, or form true. The crime scene was staged. We all had that gut feeling from the moment we walked in the door that there was something wrong here.
This was nothing close to self-defense. It was not passion, provocation, manslaughter. This was a straight-up, cold-blooded murder.
But will justice ever be served in this sensational case? Montclair police finally have attorney James Ray in custody for the murder of his live-in girlfriend, Angela Bledsoe. But bringing James to justice will be easier said than done.
COVID-19 hits, and so the trial for James Ray for the murder of Angela Bledsoe just keeps getting pushed around simply because the courts can't open. Even though James Ray is locked up, the world is locked down.
It took 4 years for this case to actually go to trial.
Finally, in March of 2023, James Ray's trial begins in a packed Essex County courtroom. Prosecutors open their case by painting the portrait of the real man behind James's facade.
He was just a real controlling, narcissistic man who wanted to keep her in her place and was really taken back that she didn't want to be with him anymore.
As an example of his spiraling behavior, prosecutors play a recording of a phone call James made to a friend just hours after the shooting.
Hear me out. She says, oh, she's upset and annoyed because 5 years ago, I wasn't available to be there with her when she was pregnant. I said, I was married, you know that. Yeah, but you didn't show that you cared. What?
He rants about everything, about her infidelity, about his state of being, about how he just couldn't take it anymore, and he seemed unhinged.
Though he never outright admits to his friend that he killed Angela, he does make some cryptic implications.
I'm going to speak in generalities, and it's going to sound scary, but don't get scared.
Okay.
Sometimes you have to protect people in a way that's unconventional.
What, the things you go through to protect people, you're saying?
Yes, you really do.
Following the cryptic phone call, prosecutors bring in a ballistics expert to debunk the story James told in his manifesto.
We were asked to look at the case, the evidence of the case, and we were able to determine what we believed was the sequence of events that occurred that evening.
Experts conclude that the crime scene isn't consistent with a shootout, but rather an execution, starting in the living room.
James, we need to talk. I found a house, and I'm moving out.
No, you're not going anywhere.
What do you mean? What are you doing, James?
Ms. Bledsoe received a gunshot wound to the front of her upper torso. That projectile exited her back. The projectile then lodged in the backrest cushion of the sofa.
She then gets up, and we know that because there's a bloody handprint on the armrest, and then there's a trail of blood that starts to lead from the living room into the kitchen.
Experts believe Angela was crawling into the kitchen when James fired the second shot.
At some point between where she was first shot and her final resting position, she received additional gunfire, and that gunshot came into her back.
She had to have been shot in the back prior to coming to her final resting position because her final resting position was on her back.
Fighting for her life, Angela was able to turn over for one last look at her former lover as he stood over her and fired the final shot.
There was nowhere else he could have been except standing right over her when he delivered that gunshot. So the ballistics in this case and the wound paths completely demolished any claim of self-defense that James Ray was trying to assert.
The question has to be asked, just from any investigative standpoint. You're holding the firearm in your hand. You've already fired the firearm. You've already struck the individual. If you're that much in fear, why don't you leave?
He could have went to the neighbors and he could have called for help. He didn't do anything like that.
Frankly, Mr. Ray gave us everything we needed to disprove his claim of self-defense. When he left the crime scene the way it was, Mr. Ray helped us actually prove our case beyond a reasonable doubt that it was in fact an intentional, knowing murder.
After a 7-week trial, it only takes the jury 3 hours to reach a verdict.
He was found guilty of first-degree murder, and it was just sheer joy, sheer elation.
But just a few days before James is due to face a sentencing of up to life in prison, the story takes one last shocking turn.
On June 18, 2023, Father's Day, James Ray was found unresponsive in his cell at Essex County Correctional Facility.
James is rushed to the hospital, but it's too late. He's pronounced dead from a drug overdose.
It kind of brings disappointment to the investigation, to the prosecution, and also to the family itself.
He needed to hear the impact statements, and then they wanted to let them know what they felt. And he ducked what he needed to hear from the loved ones.
Justice fell a little short for the Bledsoe family, and that's too bad. They deserve better. But in everybody's mind, he was convicted. That's the most important thing, is that everybody knows that James Ray did not go to his grave an innocent man.
It's a shame that a woman who had so much potential and already proved so much success and so much knowledge had to end in this way because of a lover.
A mom lost her life, a daughter lost a mom, and years later, the daughter loses her father.
With domestic cases, people that are left behind are the ones that really get hurt the most. All these other family members have to suffer now for the rest of their lifetime.
Domestic violence does not discriminate. You could be successful, you could be educated, and it could still come to your doorstep. Listen to yourself and the voice inside your head that says, maybe this relationship is toxic. Just be safe and get out of the relationship.
Abuse is never okay. If you or someone you love is in an abusive relationship, there is help available. Call the Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE.
Giờ này có tam hợp là có thêm được 400 máu, 300 máu, đánh nhìn tự tin hơn là đánh có lười hái, thấy không? Cái gai lười hái nhìn đó.
Hollywood, California, aka La La Land, home to some of the most elite stars and nights filled with champagne wishes and caviar dreams. It's no wonder the elite come here to parlay and play with entertainment's most influential tastemakers.
What began as a glamorous evening at a party hosted by Kylie Jenner ended in tragedy and turmoil.
We're talking about a trio of friends. We're talking about a potential love triangle. And after this one incident, like, it all was over. No one could.
Us that this may have been a vengeance killing.
I had heard from other people that him and this person was beefing.
They chose to take matters into their own hands. There is no appeal from the verdict of the streets.
At 8:50 on the morning of December 23rd, 2013, police in Albany, New York received multiple 911 calls about a shooting in the historic Arbor Hill neighborhood.
Myself and my partner, Kevin Quinlivan, we were leaving the South Station where our detective office was out of. The radio went off, we heard tones, and it was 4 shots fired, a man down on Grand Street.
The neighborhood is one of Albany's oldest neighborhoods. There's a school about a block away from where this occurred, up the street, and many people normally out and about on the street at this time of day.
They had crime scene tape up in front of the location of where the shooting had just occurred, and we were advised that the individual that had been shot was transported to Albany Medical Center.
When detectives learned the victim is 37-year-old Sylvester Scott Jr., they immediately recognized the name.
I knew Sylvester Scott from growing up in Albany, watching him play basketball and being in the neighborhood.
This school that I went to, which was Bishop McGinn, he went to Albany High. He and I competed against one another on the basketball teams. I know that he was coaching basketball, being involved with his family, and really trying to make a difference, not only for himself, but his family members and everyone else surrounding him.
So why had he been gunned down in broad daylight? Sylvester Scott Jr. was born on January 1st, 1976 in Niagara Falls, New York, the second oldest of 7 children. After his parents divorced, Sylvester grew up in Albany with his father and stepmother.
He came down here with his father, I think when he was around 10 years old. So he went to high school, graduated from high school here. He loved basketball. He even received a scholarship, a partial scholarship for college basketball.
After spending some time at Sage Junior College, Sylvester built his future in Albany.
I met Sylvester in downtown Albany. And we were, friends. We knew the same people. The neighborhood, just, we all hung around each other. He was a clown, always had people laughing, joke. He liked to cook, so he would put a grill out in the middle of the sidewalk. He'd cook on the grill and do little stuff. We went out on a couple dates and stuff, and all right, maybe I can date this guy.
The relationship quickly turned serious, and in 2000, Sylvester became a father.
He was excited, shocked, and, just happy about it. He was a good dad.
4 years later, the couple welcomed a second child. But around the same time, Sylvester's fun-loving lifestyle took him away from his family when he got busted for selling marijuana.
He spent as a whole, about 6 years in prison.
Through it all, Sylvester tried to remain positive.
He was not a violent person, at all. At all. Totally not. He was a more live your life type of guy, fun, just, live life. That was what he was about.
Released in 2009, Sylvester decided on a new lifestyle.
He was a very smart person, intelligent guy. Maybe the time in prison gave him that time to sit there and think and, really get his thoughts and mind together about what he wanted to do. He started doing things with the children. He was a basketball coach, so he started, forming basketball leagues, and my daughters even played with him. He started this organization, Intelligence Over Emotions, and that came from the violence that was going on at the time.
The most violent crime in Albany for a long period of time has revolved around really what we would say is gang retaliation. Sylvester Scott was someone who was going around saying the only shooting that should happen on a basketball court. That was something he liked to say.
He was trying to help children not make the mistakes that he did. You can't save everybody, but you can save some.
Sylvester's community work was going strong, but his marriage was suffering.
As with a lot of couples, things just fall off. In 2010, we decided that we had grown apart. And we separated for a bit.
Around the same time, Sylvester found a new love.
He did let me know he was married, and I was like, you got some things to work out, I got some things to work out. Our first date, he actually took me into a diner, and that's when we got to know each other. And he told me about his daughters that he loved so much, and I told him that I had a son. I had just came out of a relationship for like 7 years, so I was okay with just being friends, but he was the one that wanted the relationship. Like, no, I want you in my life. I want it to be me and you. My son's father wasn't really in his life, and Sylvester, played a big part.
When Nabrisha and Sylvester divorced, everyone agreed to a friendly coexistence.
Nabrisha and I, we didn't form a relationship right then and there, but we was both parents, so we knew what we had to do.
Everybody got along. The kids went over there and stayed, nights, weekends, whatever. Pick them up, take them wherever they want, Me and Camille spoke, so no problem.
By 2011, Sylvester's extended family joined his mission to help young people in the Arbor Hill community.
He would do barbecues, buy food with his own money. I mean, he would have my trunk filled up with hot dogs, burgers, buns, and he never charged for this. He would just feed the community. He found something that he loved, and he just couldn't stop.
But now, Sylvester Scott has been shot in the community he was serving. Investigators need to determine why and who did it.
There were shell casings that were left in the road. We were able to recover some .45 caliber shell casings and some 9mm shell casings.
The perpetrators fired at least 7 shots at Sylvester from the 2 weapons.
We then immediately began to conduct a canvass of the neighborhood to see what we could find out. We spoke to a store clerk. He told us that he had seen a person who he knows as Sylvester Scott walk by. And after seeing him walk by, he heard some shots. He looked out and saw Sylvester Scott laying in the road.
The witness says he also noticed a vehicle fleeing the scene after the shooting.
He was able to see what he believed to be a dark-colored van or SUV leaving the area going northbound on Grand Street towards Madison.
We then became very interested in this black SUV that was seen leaving the area.
After being shot in Albany, New York, Sylvester Scott Jr. has been taken to the hospital. So far, police have found shell casings from 2 weapons and a witness who saw a dark-colored SUV fleeing the scene.
After speaking to him, we proceeded down the street and we found some video footage at a liquor store at the intersection of Grand Street and Madison Avenue. We viewed the video right in the store, and we did see a dark-colored SUV in the area after the shooting. We also noticed that there was some activity on the driver's side door and passenger side door of the driver's side where the windows were going up and down.
Detectives conclude that there might have been two shooters, one in the front, one in the back.
But we weren't able to see anyone's face, and we could not see a plate on the vehicle.
Authorities put out an all-points bulletin on the suspicious vehicle.
We then continued our canvass of the neighborhood by knocking on doors, attempting to find people that may have been outside, seen something, or heard something.
They find no new witnesses, but the brazen nature of the crime has shocked the community.
For someone to fire a .45 caliber handgun and a 9mm handgun on a city street at 8:50 in the morning on a Monday where there's people all around is ruthless. It was daylight, there was a school a block away, and just to have bullets flying around in the manner they were created a grave risk of danger to the people that lived and worked in that neighborhood.
In fact, when the shots were fired at Sylvester, there was a round that went into the apartment of 87 Grand Street where a 4-year-old child was sleeping and came close to striking that child.
Investigators extract a bullet from a wall inside the apartment. For now, there's not much else to go on.
At this point in the investigation, we had no one coming forward with any information in regards to being an eyewitness to this shooting. And there's been quite a few cases that, we've been involved with that a lot of the members of communities, they don't want to speak with police and they would rather handle any situations themselves.
In the close-knit neighborhood, people talk, and news spreads fast to Sylvester's ex-wife and the mother of his children, Nabrisha Hicks.
I specifically remember I was putting my boots on and my phone rang. It was my sister who actually lives on Grand Street, and she said, Sylvester just got shot in his head on Grand Street. I said, what? She repeated herself. I hung up the phone. I get to the corner of Grand and Ash Grove, but I can't go any further because the street is blocked off. And there's a house that kind of sits back, and there's a lady that lives in the house, and she knew who I was. I worked with her for years.
The woman says she heard the gunshots while she was inside.
She just happened to be home when that happened. And she ran outside, and she saw that it was him. She grabbed some towels to try to pressure his wound. And he got shot in his neck, shoulder area. And she tried to, apply pressure and talk to him, telling him to, hold on, they're coming.
The woman says that when she last saw Sylvester, he was in grave condition.
She says the lights weren't on the ambulance when they left.
Nabrisha rushes to Albany Medical Center.
I go in and say, I'm here for Sylvester Scott. Who are you? Nabrisha Hicks, I'm his kid's mother. They tell me to hold on. Somebody's coming to get me. So when they come out to get me, they bring me in a room. I know what it means when they're bringing me in this room. They tell me he was only shot one time, and it hit a main artery, and he bled to death. I just kept saying, no way, no way.
Around midday, Sylvester's girlfriend, Camille Osborne, also receives the tragic news.
I woke up to my son screaming my name out. Screaming my name out, like, Ma, Sylvester. Like, I jumped up out of my sleep, ran in his room, and he was on the phone with his friends. And he was like, Sylvester was killed. I immediately ran to my phone, started calling him. And it just like my body just changed, like, because I'm like, he's not answering the phone.
Family, friends, and investigators gather at the hospital, all asking the same question.
Nabrisha, his wife, was already there with her family. We both was just trying to figure out what happened, like who would want to kill him. I mean, this was 8:30 in the morning, broad daylight. You know, there was school, people was outside, it's a busy area, cars going by, like, what happened? I felt like I was in like a scary movie. Like, it just, I couldn't believe like this was happening. I couldn't believe this was happening.
After the fatal shooting of Sylvester Scott Jr., police in Albany, New York speak to his friends and family members, hoping someone can lead them to a potential suspect.
With homicide investigations, or any investigation, you always hope to find a motive as to why it happened.
We often have learned over the years that sometimes the family hears things before we do.
Loved ones offer one possible explanation for what has happened.
Sylvester called me one day and told me that somebody was trying to rob him and it turned into a fight. And then I had heard from other people that him and this person was beefing. And it didn't happen too far from the time of his murder.
But the connection seems thin.
It happened like a few months back, but that person ended up going to jail, so he wasn't worried about that.
Is it possible the imprisoned man got someone else to shoot Sylvester as payback?
They were looking at photos and wanted to know if I knew any of the people in the photos. The pictures that they showed me were not people I knew.
Later, Sylvester's family hears a new theory circulating within the community.
The main story was supposed to be Sylvester broke into this house, robbed this gentleman, and then raped the young lady that was in the house. I was like, that's not even, absolutely not.
No, that's not him. That's not his style. That's not his character. Sylvester loved people, and to go out and rob someone or to rape someone, I mean, he has daughters.
Rape, absolutely not. Robbery, no, too, because he's just not that type of person.
Police focused their investigation on the dark SUV that was seen fleeing from the scene. Eventually, the search pays off.
A black SUV was located at a local hotel in Colony, probably about 15 minutes from where the shooting took place.
When authorities run the license plate, they find the vehicle is registered to 46-year-old Russell Palmer, who has a criminal record going back to the early 1990s.
He's had a couple of convictions in the past, and same issues of past drug entanglements. He's a guy that has allegedly had some sort of gang involvement.
Near the SUV, police spot Russell Palmer. He's with his nephew, 31-year-old Kareem Murray, who also has a criminal record.
Kareem Murray, when he was in his early 20s, was in some legal trouble. He had some problems in state court. He ends up getting indicted, and he ends up being convicted in a federal drug case in Albany.
At the time, Kareem Murray is on federal probation.
There was a separate investigation being conducted by the state police in regards to those two individuals.
Russell Palmer and Kareem Murray were both involved in Kareem Murray's drug activities. Russell Palmer was more of an assistant or a deputy to Kareem Murray. He was his right-hand man, someone that Kareem Murray trusted very much.
Authorities request a search warrant for Russell Palmer's black SUV. While they wait, the big question for Albany police is what the two convicted drug dealers might have had to do with Sylvester Scott.
At this point, Mr. Murray and Mr. Palmer were taken into custody by police and then transported down to the police station.
Sylvester's family and the community wait eagerly for answers.
I didn't know in the beginning the circumstances behind anything. As the day grew, I started to learn more. I started to hear more. And I don't know what's the truth, what's not the truth. The streets talk, people talk. The police got their story or whatever, you know, they're trying to put together a puzzle too.
Hours after Sylvester Scott was fatally shot on a public street in Albany, New York, police confront two suspects, Russell Palmer, who owns an SUV like the one seen fleeing the scene, and his nephew, Kareem Murray.
We went into the interview room where Mr. Murray was being held, and pretty standard practice when you go in there, you read someone their Miranda warnings. We read those warnings to him, and at the time he invoked his right to counsel.
He immediately indicated that he had a lawyer and the interview was terminated.
We then went to the interview room where Russell Palmer was. We went in, same process. We introduced ourselves, and then he was given his Miranda warnings. Unlike Mr. Murray, Mr. Palmer agreed to speak with us.
One of the first things we did was ask him about a black GMC Yukon. He distanced himself from the vehicle. At first, he told us that he had parked it in a garage in New York City and left the keys with a friend.
We started identifying some inconsistencies in what Mr. Palmer was saying to the police, as well as some statements that just made absolute no sense. For instance, Russell Palmer denied any knowledge of where his Yukon was, and in fact, it was parked next to him when he was arrested.
Investigators asked the suspect where he was at the time of Sylvester Scott's murder.
Russell Palmer told us that he was picked up by his sister on the morning of the homicide, at the apartment where he was staying on Green Street. He had gone to social services with his sister, and then they had gone to an address on North Pearl Street to get some Christmas presents for the upcoming holiday.
There was a point during the interview of Russell Palmer that his sister was brought in.
They're both contradicting one another in regards to what transpired that morning about who went in what car, where they went, and who they were with.
The interview in its entirety lasted approximately 12 hours with Russell Palmer. During the 12 hours, he changed his story several times about who he was with and where he had went. Eventually, he admitted to lying about the vehicle, who he had given the keys to, where he had parked it, where it was being kept. He was trying to tell us that he was afraid to tell the truth because he's afraid that he might get in trouble for something.
But unfortunately, the interview ended without Russell giving a confession in regards to what happened on Graham Street.
Soon after, investigators execute a search warrant for Russell Palmer's black SUV and discover potential evidence.
That evidence included 2 firearms, 1 a .45 caliber handgun, 2 a 9mm handgun, a box of ammunition, and some narcotics. The ammunition that was present in the 9mm handgun, which was Winchester, was consistent with the ammunition from the expended shell casings at the scene. Additionally, the .45 caliber ammunition, which was Spear, was also located at the scene among the expended projectiles. The firearms were then swabbed for DNA.
Palmer agrees to submit to a DNA swab for comparison to the firearms, but that process can take months. In the meantime, the circumstantial evidence isn't strong enough to charge either suspect with murder. Luckily, police have something they can charge them with.
At that time, the decision was made that Russell Palmer was going to be arrested for the handguns and the drugs and the ammunition that were located inside the vehicle that was registered to him.
Police also decide to charge Palmer's nephew.
Kareem Murray was arrested for a violation of federal probation.
Investigators continue to work on the murder case against Palmer and Murray.
I met with Mr. Murray. We talked about the case. There was no direct proof, no eyewitness to the shooting, no admission by my client of the shooting. So it was based on circumstantial evidence.
This is not a case where you can just walk into a grand jury or before a jury with an eyewitness and say, this is what happened. You have to take little pieces of evidence and try to put them together like a puzzle. It took us a bit of time to put the entire murder case together.
As far as the length of a case and how long it takes to solve that case, it really is dependent on the available information that you have, the evidence that you have.
You have DNA tests that are being done, and that can all take a while. Often there's backlogs with the New York State Police lab and other labs everywhere, and cases are prioritized and people do the best they can. But the reality is a lot of these things take time.
As frustrating as it is for people on the outside looking in, it really is something that you don't want to be rushed. Because seeing that person that you believe is responsible for your loved one's death, walking out the door because you didn't do what needed to be done.
In Albany, New York, have arrested Russell Palmer on possession charges and Kareem Murray on a probation violation while still pursuing evidence against them in the murder of Sylvester Scott. The first report the New York State Police Crime Lab releases indicates that Sylvester Scott was killed by a 9mm bullet. They're still working on the DNA evidence from the guns found in Palmer's SUV, which could ID the shooters. Until then, police turn to the victim's family for help.
We spoke with several members of Sylvester's family, obviously to keep them apprised and made aware of how the investigation was going, but also to see what information, if any, they were getting in regards to what happened to Sylvester.
Friends and family members tell police about the rumors they have heard.
The day after Christmas is when Detective Vogel and Detective Quinn Levin came to my home. I let them know I was told a story that there was some girl that was raped and robbed, and that they believe, the killers believe that it was Sylvester.
When investigators hear about this rumor, they are finally able to make a connection between the suspects and Sylvester Scott. 3 days before the murder, Kareem Murray reported to police that while he was out of town, the house he shared with his girlfriend was robbed by 3 men. And one of the men raped his girlfriend.
She had been residing with Mr. Murray at a place in Albany. That place was robbed by 3 individuals. One was a taller man. One was I suppose a normal-sized man. And the other individual who apparently perpetrated the rape was an individual that she described as having green eyes.
The police had offered to help Kareem Murray. Hey, we can investigate this rape. He said, I'll take care of it myself.
Sylvester didn't have green eyes, but police believe Kareem felt he was one of the robbers who were there.
It was becoming pretty clear to us that this may have been a vengeance killing because of the belief that Sylvester Scott had something to do with this sexual assault.
That's really where this case really started to take off, because now we had 2 investigations, parallel investigations, moving forward.
Soon after, Albany police learned that another agency is conducting a 3rd investigation related to Kareem Murray.
Kareem Murray was involved in a federal cocaine case, which he served, was sentenced to 120 months in prison. That's 10 years, ended up getting out. But there's an ongoing investigation involving the state police. There's an ongoing wiretap. A few weeks before the murder, they're starting to get evidence that something is going on here.
The state investigators share tape recordings of phone calls made by Kareem and Russell.
There were 2 series of calls that we were interested in. One was a call dealing with Kareem Murray's and Russell Palmer's efforts to obtain some weapons shortly after the rape of his girlfriend.
Through those wiretaps, they were able to get information that Francis Bailey was the one who supplied some of the weapons to Kareem Murray and Russell Palmer.
Francis Bailey is connected to Kareem Murray through a prior federal case. And he will be involved in this case because Francis Bailey is the person they contact to get what they call a strizzy. It's a 9mm.
Police confront the alleged gun salesman to confirm he sold a 9mm to Kareem Murray.
We sit down with Mr. Bailey. We have a conversation with him where he's able to give us information about this case.
Bailey says that, based on the girlfriend's description, that the rapist had green eyes. Kareem Murray believed he knew who it was.
Kareem Murray fixed on this individual green eyes, and he identified it as an individual from Albany.
The green-eyed man Kareem thought was the rapist is named Jermaine Douglas.
Sylvester Scott happened to be an associate of this individual.
Kareem Murray had conducted his own street investigation, and he made the determination that Sylvester Scott was one of the individuals that had broken into his house.
According to Francis Bailey, Kareem didn't know who the third man was, but he decided to exact revenge on the other two, assisted by Russell Palmer.
What happened was that they pursued all these individuals over the course of the weekend.
First, on December 21st, they attacked Jermaine Douglas.
We subsequently interviewed Jermaine Douglas. He denied any involvement in the sexual assault, but he did say that he was shot at. The sexual assault occurred on December 20th. On December 21st, in the area of Grand and Madison, which was the same area where the homicide occurred, several shots were fired at Jermaine Douglas.
Luckily, during that incident, no one was hurt, no one was hit, and no one was killed.
Then, on December 23rd, the homicide occurred.
We believe Sylvester Scott became an unwitting and tragic statistic of street justice, and there is no appeal from the verdict of the streets.
A second wiretap recording reveals another crucial piece of evidence. Shortly after the attack on Sylvester Scott, Russell Palmer called Francis Bailey to ask for another gun and additional ammunition to try again to kill Jermaine Douglas.
They needed the ammunition because they weren't done. They gunned down Sylvester, but they weren't done.
The phone call also gives police hard evidence that both of their suspects were involved in the recent shooting.
We could hear it was Russell Palmer on the call, but in the background we distinctly heard Kareem Murray say, "He's dead." And that call where he said pretty animatedly, he's dead, as if he knew what happened, became a pretty crucial piece of evidence to show that he had been involved in the shooting.
Weeks after the murder of Sylvester Scott, forensic analysts deliver hard evidence connecting the two main suspects, Russell Palmer and Kareem Murray, to the guns found in Palmer's vehicle on the day of the crime.
Through the New York State Lab, we were able to determine that the shell casings that were left at the scene matched the same caliber and was a hit with the two weapons.
The 9mm Ruger matches the bullet that killed Sylvester, and the DNA result suggests who fired that gun.
We found out that DNA affiliated with Russell Palmer came back positive for the 9mm handgun.
What I learned about Russell Palmer is that he was extremely loyal to a fault. He was loyal to his nephew, felt that his nephew had a wrong visited upon him, and was going to do whatever he could to make sure that that wrong was avenged.
We subsequently presented this case to a grand jury, and Russell Palmer and Kareem Murray were both indicted for the homicide of Sylvester Scott.
It was a big relief. I was able to sleep. Me and my friends and my sister, we actually celebrated a little. Someone is definitely going down for taking somebody that meant so much to me and so many people.
On May 6, 2015, nearly a year and a half after the murder of Sylvester Scott, his alleged killers go on trial. And both Sylvester Scott and Jermaine Douglas are publicly exonerated for the rape.
During that trial, we learned a lot. But the most important thing that we learned, that Sylvester was innocent. He was not the person who raped this young lady or robbed the house. During the trial, we found out that there was another person in prison for that.
Police, in the end, identified, arrested, and prosecuted the rapist of Kareem Murray's girlfriend. And he eventually pled guilty and is doing about 16 years in prison. This is a case of vengeance, misguided vengeance, but vengeance. A man who was wrongly accused and wrongly condemned because of something someone else thought he did.
Attorneys for the two defendants blame each other's clients, while the two defendants themselves remain silent.
Typically, when there's multiple defendants on trial, you have the prosecution and you have their theory of events. And then typically, both defendants are on the same page. They'll say, prosecution's wrong, our guys didn't do it, end of story. That's not what happened in this case.
We had antagonistic defenses, as they call it. Mr. Murray was going to blame my client, Mr. Palmer, and we were going to, throughout the trial, indicate that Mr. Murray was the actual shooter.
What turned out to be a pretty significant piece of evidence was the window. The Yukon drove in front of a liquor store at the corner of Grand and Madison. And this would have been seconds after the shot. And what we noticed was that the rear driver's side window was rolling up. What we were able to determine from that was that someone was in the back seat. When I showed that to the jury, and I played it a couple times to them, I heard an audible gasp. The jury got it.
They both roll the window down, and they both shoot at him.
On May 15, 2015, Russell Palmer and Kareem Murray are found guilty of all charges. They each received sentences of 37 years to life in prison.
But the real tragedy of this is that Sylvester Scott's life ended needlessly, senselessly, and suddenly. It was something that absolutely should never have happened.
If Kareem Murray and Russell Palmer wanted to go out and try and gather information in regard to what happened to Kareem's girlfriend, they had two choices. Choice number one, going to the police and giving them the information so that way it could have been properly investigated. But they chose to do what they did. They chose to take matters into their own hands, and now because of that, you have Sylvester's family without him.
Everybody just took a harsh loss for no reason at all. I felt like my heart was just ripped out. Christmas was never the same. Christmas to this day, 10 years later, is still not the same.
Our girls are young adults now. My daughter texted me maybe a week ago. and saying how much she missed her father and she wishes he was here. So now I just think back to, what if he was here now? You know, how would this be and where would, you know? But it is what it is.
I had to learn that I was never gonna get over it. I just had to learn how to deal with it.
Because I don't know. What do you say? I don't even have the words.
I miss him. Thinking about him all the time, and it hurt because when I'm out, somebody always saying, "You look just like your brother."
He was laying on his back with his head towards the one wall where the TV was. He was shot 5 times. The kill shot passed through his heart.
There's a lot of emotion that comes along with this story.
The type of things that she went through and a lot of the abuse that she was suffering.
Her mindset was that she wanted to do whatever she could at that time to hurt him.
And now the problem with violence is that you can't process the consequences.
September 2nd, 2020, in the throes of the COVID-19 pandemic. A little before 1 p.m., police respond to reports of gunfire outside a residence in Steelton, Pennsylvania.
Steelton Borough is a town of roughly 6,000 residents. We border Harrisburg City on the north end of town, which is the state capital, Pennsylvania. We do get calls of shots fired, but they're usually in the evening hours, overnight hours. It's a unique call for that time of day.
Multiple officers arrived on scene. What they found was an unidentified male lying inside of his front door. He appeared to have multiple gunshot wounds. Officers did attempt to perform life-saving measures to render aid, but they determined there to be no signs of life.
The victim is a black man in his late 30s, and in a town as small as Steelton, it's not difficult for officers to identify him.
Chief of police, he knows many people in the community. He was familiar with that residence, and he knew at that point that it was Ishmael Lewis.
Ishmael Lewis was born in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania on November 25, 1980. The first of 9 children raised by devout Muslims, Mary Lewis and Hakeem Hodge.
Growing up Muslim gives you a structure, you know? It gives you a sense of being black as well. You know, it gives you a pride. The way we eat, the way we pray, the way we live our lives. So growing up Muslim is very important. It can give you discipline. Ishmael and my mom, they had a special relationship. He used to always make her smile. Ishmael's relationship with my dad, the same relationship like all of us. It was rocky because he was there, but he was in and out of our lives. He didn't really play that role. As a result, Ishmael had to take up the leadership role, being the oldest. And he did that very well. That's why I never felt the absence of a man in my life.
As Ishmael grew older, he remained an active member of the Nation of Islam. His priorities were his family and his faith, in that order. But he also had an eye for the ladies.
The Lewis brothers, we don't have problems getting women. That's never been an issue of ours. Ishmael, you couldn't hold him down unless you was a special woman.
For a while, it seemed like Ishmael had finally been tamed when his girlfriend gave birth to his first child.
His son's name's also Ishmael.
He was a good father, and he was a good guy. He was trying to do right in life.
But remaining true to his convictions became more challenging with a family to feed.
It's definitely hard to keep a job that's worthy of a paycheck that's gonna support you and your loved ones. Besides in the streets hustling. And he did time, for the mistakes he made. He did in and out of prison sometimes. He did small bids, 1 year, 2 year, and I believe his longest was about 5 years.
While Ishmael spent most of his 20s behind bars, he also fathered a total of 5 children. Now determined to become a better role model for them, he decided to make a fresh start in the nearby town of Steelton.
So he got approved for some type of government assistance to get on his feet after being in and out of jail. He got an apartment, and he was living rent free for a while, so he can get on his feet and also work his job and things like that.
He worked the midnight shift or overnight shift at Flagler Force. What Flagler Force is, if you're doing road construction somewhere, they are the flaggers that set up the cones and direct traffic around it.
He was actually getting raises, and he was actually making money that he could actually support himself and his family.
At the age of 39, Ishmael found out he was going to become a grandfather. He also recently found happiness with a new girlfriend, 20-year-old Shanasia Peterson.
She had a high school diploma, but she also had a young child. I think the child was 3 years old at the time. So she was just beginning her life.
I wasn't concerned about her age difference. That's common. It's common growing up in the hood that an older man's dating a younger woman. She always liked Ishmael. Always wanting to have a relationship.
But any chance of a new beginning has now vanished in a hail of gunfire. Ishmael has been found shot to death in broad daylight at his home, and investigators are combing the scene for clues.
When I'm going to the scene, I have to get myself in what I call detective mode. I need to slow down my thought process. Everything is step by step, can't miss anything. So I go get my camera out. So then we go, myself and the coroner's office go inside the house and start photographing the inside of the house and the deceased.
Ishmael Lewis was just inside the doorway. One of his legs was probably passing the threshold of the doorway, and he was laying on his back with his head towards the one wall where the TV was. Well, Ishmael was shot 5 times. 3 of them hit him in the legs. He was shot in both legs. He was shot once in the hip area, or groin area, and then what the forensic pathologist described as the kill shot would have gone through his back and went into his lung and passed through his heart. The gunfire in this case, to me, seemed very much targeted at Ishmael. One of the gunshots was a close range gunshot wound, meaning there was soot around the wound, which tells you it was within a foot or 2 feet.
But as far as police can tell, there's no clear motive for the crime.
There was nothing awry, really, inside the house. It's a very small apartment, maybe around 500 square feet. There looked to be nothing out of place, nothing stolen. You see where the drywall was broken out and there were some shell casings inside the house. So we knew part of the shooting happened outside and some inside.
It appears that everything happened in very close proximity. They would have started firing almost certainly outside the residence, but not far outside, maybe from the front stoop.
based on where the shell casings were, and then proceeded into the residence and fired shots inside.
However, the spent shell casings do provide detectives with a valuable piece of information.
5 of those shots came from one unidentified .40 caliber handgun, and one of the other shots came from another unidentified .40 caliber handgun.
So there was possibly 2 types of guns?
We knew that our victim did not have a firearm. He did not have a firearm that day. We believed that we had 2 shooters.
As Steelton police try to make sense of the murder of 39-year-old Ishmael Lewis, word spreads to his family back in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
I'm on my way to work, and then I get a phone call. It was my sister. She had the shaky voice. She heard that something bad happened to Ishmael. So I'm already on my way to work. So I drove to where Ishmael lives, which was Stilton. I'm driving, and I'm calling people as I'm driving, but nobody's picking up the phone. And then I get there, and then I see cops. I see a commotion, and my sisters and everybody was screaming. So at that moment, I knew my brother was gone.
Murders aren't a common occurrence in this small town. So unfortunately, police don't have the resources for a full-scale investigation. And the COVID pandemic has made resources even more scarce.
We are a small department, and we only have 2 officers on duty at a time. So the next step is Chief calls in some more detectives.
We actually called in the county forensic unit, which includes officers from multiple jurisdictions who have experience in doing forensic processing of crime scenes. While all those things are going on, other officers are canvassing the neighborhood, talking to neighbors, trying to find out what people may have seen or heard related to this crime.
They did ultimately make contact with several neighbors who had been 911 callers that day.
One witness, he saw Ishmael on the ground trying to defend himself, and there was a lone gunman standing over him inside the residence at that time.
However, the witness's statement contradicts the evidence, which indicates 2 gunmen. Luckily, investigators find another source with a better view of what happened.
One of our other detectives informed me that to the rear of Mr. Lewis's residence, somebody had a camera system set up.
They were able to collect that video evidence that captured 2 black males walking down the alley right at the time of the crime. They initially walk down the alley from the direction of where Harrisburg would be. They walk down the alley together very slowly, and they sort of pace back and forth, and they're seem to be studying their environment, and then they walk down the side of Ishmael's house, and you see them both go down those steps, which would have been leading them towards the front of Ishmael's house. They're off camera for maybe a minute or so, and then they both come walking back on camera, and now you can really see that they're walking with a purpose. They have their hoods up at this point, which they didn't before. One of them's wearing all black. The other one is wearing gray.
While the shooting itself was not caught on camera, the activity that was is highly suspicious.
The video, in conjunction with the evidence from the scene, made it pretty clear we were looking for 2 perpetrators who would have committed the crime.
It was during COVID time, so they had masks on, so it was very difficult to see their identity. We knew it was 2 black males, and that was about it. It's a whodunit.
Ishmael's family don't recognize the two men and find it hard to believe he had enemies who'd want to kill him. They wonder if it might instead be a case of mistaken identity. According to them, Ishmael had put his checkered past behind him, but his oldest son had recently attracted some unwanted attention.
The pandemic was going on, and everybody was getting lump sums of money, plus hustling, so everybody was having some type of extra income coming in. So when I'm hearing the stories about everything that's going on from the streets, it's like they wasn't sure if they were looking for Big Ish or Lil Ish, and then that's when everything happened. I remember after everything happened, we all drove straight on Market Street to my mom. And the main thing was just make sure she was fine, make sure she was all right. And of course, at that time, she wasn't at all.
Part of the African-American experience, unfortunately, revolves a lot around, Black mothers losing their sons. What that means is sometimes their kids now lost their fathers. So that's where the cycle of generational trauma kind of perpetuates itself, because they didn't have the guidance coming up because their father's life was prematurely taken. That itself conjures up feelings of rage, isolation, loneliness. Those things eventually lead to violence, and that perpetuates the cycle for it to happen again to somebody else's father.
Steelton police are searching for leads in the murder of 39-year-old Ishmael Lewis. But so far, all they have is speculation.
And we've looked at the video and we've talked to the witnesses, and the scene has been processed. We knew that we were looking for two Black males, but we didn't have specific suspects.
We are just trying to figure out what's going on. The streets is talking, so you gotta kind of bypass the BS that everybody's talking about and then what the truth is.
Then a routine search in Harrisburg reveals a surprising connection.
The day after the homicide, state parole reached out to the Steelton police, and he told them that he was going through his GPS monitoring records for the people he was supervising.
Part of their protocol is when there's a major crime that happens, they run their GPS on their clients to see if any of their clients were in the area of a major crime.
He noticed that an individual named Mason Quayles, who had a GPS monitor on his ankle at that time, because he was being supervised by state parole, that he was at the scene of the crime at the time of the crime the day before.
I met with the state parole agent, and it showed Mr. Mason Quayles in the area behind the house, going anywhere from 0 to 2 miles per hour. After the homicide, it shows Mr. Mason Quayles running northbound in the alley at 13 miles per hour. So now I know Mr. Mason Quayles is my prime suspect.
But there's a problem. Quayles has disappeared.
Mason cut his GPS bracelet off the day after the crime occurred on a September 3rd. Agent Garrity got a tampering notification that showed that it had been cut, and he actually recovered the device from Mason's mother's house the next day. The police then start investigating Mason Quayles, who his associates might have been, who might have been with him at that time.
I get all the information, date of birth, address, and I get his phone number. And when I run his phone number, the phone was actually owned by Miss Aubriana Parisi.
Police reach out to Aubriana to see if she knows where Quayles went, but she refuses to talk.
Detective Schaub had tried to talk to her a couple different times. She knew that we were interested in finding out what she knew about this situation, and I think she was scared to cooperate.
However, detectives soon come up with another lead.
The Steelton police realized that they had a call that had come in about a half hour prior to the shooting call that also involved Shanasia Peterson. And Shanasia Peterson was the girlfriend at that time of Ishmael Lewis.
When Miss Shanasia Peterson called and said that she was involved with a domestic with her boyfriend, Ishmael Lewis, at 517 North Front Street, that's where the homicide was 28 minutes later.
Is it coincidence or connection? Detectives immediately pay Shanasia a visit to find out.
I go to her house. One of the detectives was in with her, came out to speak with me, and he told me that she was advised that Mr. Lewis is deceased. She was a little upset. There was no tears in her eyes, and we talked a little bit about the domestic violence call that she was involved with.
She said her and Ishmael Lewis were romantically involved. They were seeing each other. She indicated that it was not uncommon for her to spend the night at Ishmael's house a few times a week. That day, she had spent the night.
Shanasia says she made food while Ishmael worked. But in the process, she spilled oil on a few of his belongings. It was an innocent mistake, but according to Shanasia, Ishmael didn't see it that way.
As she was cleaning that up, she had moved some things around. The next morning, she wakes up, Ishmael had gotten home, and he starts asking her, why did you move this? Why did you move that? Then they start arguing, and according to Shanasia, it became physical. Shanasia indicated that he had shoved her and grabbed her and pulled her, knocked her to the ground, that he had stomped her face, she said, with his foot.
She left and went back to her home and didn't know what to do. But soon, she contacted law enforcement to report that incident of domestic violence.
Before any of the department's officers could respond, Ishmael was murdered. Under the circumstances, investigators find the timing suspicious.
It's very odd where you call in a domestic violence call and 28 minutes later, your boyfriend, suspect, is murdered. There was no bruising, no blood, nothing to say that she was involved in the physical altercation. So my whodunit is, do I feel Shanasia is somehow involved in this? Yes.
They'll need more than a feeling, however, if they're going to charge Shanasia with killing her boyfriend.
Not everybody that's a victim of domestic violence shows, physical causes of it. So in that case, you may notice that some victims are, very insecure, very fearful, very worrisome, and also conversely, you may get some that hide it very well. So you may not always be able to tell a victim of domestic violence.
I asked her, after the domestic violence call, did she call anybody or speak to anybody on her phone? And she said yes, she called her friend, Miss Aubriana Parisi.
It's too much to just be a coincidence.
After the murder of Ishmael Lewis in the fall of 2020, his family gathers to pay their last respects.
My brother's memorial service was packed. There was a lot of people. He had a lot of loved ones. So there was a lot of people there. It was real hard because at that now I gotta see him in a casket. Now I get confirmation that he's gone. It kind of like breaks the wall. It kind of breaks you down a little bit, and then you just start crying.
Detectives' most pressing concern is the fact that Ishmael's killers are still on the loose. The two women who might be able to identify them are unwilling to talk.
I asked Shanasia if she would come down and give a formal interview at the station, and she refused.
Aubriana Parisi was obviously Shanasia Peterson's friend, but she seemed to be terrified.
Sometimes people are scared to cooperate because they fear retaliation. Sometimes they just don't want to be known as a snitch.
Without the cooperation of these potential witnesses, the investigation hits a wall.
We started focusing on trying to figure out who is this other individual, and the police were getting anonymous tips at that time, or it might be this person, it might be that person.
None of the leads pan out. But the day after Ishmael's memorial service, investigators get an unexpected break in the case.
Mason Quayles was actually finally arrested on September 11th at a hotel where Miss Aubriana Parisi had her room booked underneath her name. So he was taken into custody by the U.S. Marshals.
After the crime, started fleeing, but then he came back to Harrisburg, and his girlfriend actually got him a room in Swatara Township, and he was brought in on the probation violations.
Aubriana Parisi is also arrested and charged with harboring a fugitive. But it's nearly a month before police are able to convince her to tell them what she knows. Due to the COVID pandemic, Aubriana and the detectives all wear masks during her interrogation.
Between September and October, I had gained access to Miss Peterson's phone through a search warrant and showed the conversations between herself, Miss Aubriana Parisi.
Those conversations seem to confirm what investigators already suspect.
She knew Shanasia wanted some kind of revenge. She offered to call her boyfriend, Mason Quayles, and have him assist Shanasia in seeking that revenge.
They agreed that Mason Quayles would come over to Shanasia's place so they could talk about what they were going to do about this situation with Ishmael Lewis.
On the way, Quayles picked up a friend to help. And according to Aubriana, they were willing to do anything Shanasia asked.
A person by the name of MG, Marcus Garner, was with him at the time, and she advised us that they were involved in going down to the house and the shooting.
When detectives ask Quayles about his girlfriend's story, he refuses to answer. And Shanasia continues to evade police as well.
Shanasia actually left the area for a while. Shortly after the crime, she went to New Jersey. Detective Schaub tried multiple times to get her to come back to talk because she was clearly somebody we had an interest in speaking to. And certainly after Aubriana came in, then it became even more important.
So on December 22nd of 2020, charges were filed against Mr. Mason Quayles and Shanasia Peterson for the homicide of Mr. Ishmael Lewis. Shanasia was arrested on December 26th.
As investigators focus their efforts on identifying the second shooter, a call comes in that promises to break the case wide open.
Ms. Shanasia Peterson contacted the district attorney's office and stated that she wanted to sit down and now speak about the investigation.
In June of 2021, 9 months after Ishmael Lewis was gunned down at his Steelton home, his girlfriend, Shanasia Peterson, finally agrees to meet with investigators.
This was a big one that Shanasia wanted to talk, and so we were curious what she was going to have to say.
To their surprise, Shanasia doesn't hold back. She tells detectives that Ishmael's alleged attack on her that morning left her wanting revenge.
She admitted that she called Miss Aubriana Parisi, who sent Mason Quayles to her house, and Mr. Mason Quayles was accompanied by another individual she knows as Marcus Garner.
The younger somebody is and the less experienced with the criminal justice system somebody is, the more likely they are to go against attorney advice, which is not necessarily to remain silent. Little did Shanasia know that the contents of that conversation could have put her away for life.
Shanasia Peterson was friends with Mason Quayles since they were kids. And Marcus Garner, she didn't know quite as well, but she had interacted with him in the past. So she tells them what happened, and they talk about what they're going to do.
She knew that Mr. Lewis had come into some money, and she knew the PIN numbers to all of his cards, so they were supposed to rob him of his cards.
But Shanasia says when the men returned, it was clear things hadn't gone according to plan.
She said Mason got there first. He seemed like he was frazzled, and he said, went left.
Mason Quayles and Marcus Garner started fighting him, and the two of them were losing to Mr. Lewis. And that's when the shooting occurred.
Shanasia explained that this is not how she saw that going. She did not intend for Mason and Marcus to kill her boyfriend Ishmael. In fact, she warned against it. She said, I know how things can go wrong. Don't kill him. And unfortunately, they did.
Every detail that she gave us was consistent with the other evidence that we had. And she wasn't aware of all that evidence. So all those things lined up to make us confident that she was telling the truth.
Shanasia has not only implicated herself in the crime, she's given investigators vital evidence against the second shooter, Marcus Garner, aka MG.
Before Shanasia spoke to us, we didn't have any person that could say that they actually saw Marcus Garner there on that day. And so that piece was very important.
She's the one that sent them down. She saw them after the crime occurred, and they left. So now we have enough to charge Mr. Marcus Garner.
As news of the arrests reaches Ishmael's family, they have a hard time accepting that his girlfriend could have played a role in the crime.
That's the crazy part. I didn't hear that they was having no problems. So when I heard everything, it's almost like it was unexpected, but growing up in the hood, it's like anything can happen. It's like, it's unexpected, but when you hear something so like outlandish, something so wild, it's not uncommon.
According to Shanasia, she wanted revenge for her claims of domestic abuse, of which there is no real evidence.
A woman gets in a relationship with a male who maybe isn't treating her the way that she would like to be treated, really the way that any person should be treated. And so she starts taking measures to try to get back at him.
It is clear that Shanasia wanted revenge. But what is also clear is she did not intend for Ishmael to be killed that day.
It was robbery that went wrong. She told them that she didn't want to kill, that she just wanted to get back at him for the domestic violence.
Even with no proof of the domestic violence, the DA's office agrees, offering Shanasia a deal instead of prosecuting her for murder.
with her cooperating with law enforcement, providing information that was important for us to be able to get the people who actually carried out the killing, we decided that we believed it was appropriate for her to plead guilty to the robbery and conspiracy to commit robbery and not go forward on any murder charges with her. Certainly part of that arrangement involved her cooperating and testifying truthfully at the trial against Mason Quayles and Marcus Garner.
2 years have passed since the death of Ishmael Lewis, and his accused killers Marcus Garner and Mason Quayles are finally set to stand trial. Prosecutors are confident of their case against the two men, but days before the trial begins, one of their key witnesses gets spooked.
Mason Quayles had written to Aubriana Parisi while he was awaiting trial, and in that letter, he essentially threatened to kill Aubriana Parisi.
He identified himself by his street name, Booney, in the letter. He talked about her and Shanasia and how it's her fault that he's under investigation. He explained that he wanted to end her life.
State's attorneys confiscate the letter and submit it as further evidence. On October 19th, 2022, the trial begins.
So we decided as a family not to go to the trial. First thing, I didn't want to see my mom crying no more. I didn't want to see her crying no more. I wanted to put it behind me. They was going to get the sentence they was going to get, you know, whether I was there or not.
When Aubriana takes the stand, there's no denying Quayles' threats have been effective.
Aubriana was clearly, she didn't appear to want to be there. She seemed to be terrified.
She was understandably very reluctant to testify or do anything that would show Mason Quayles or Marcus Garner that she was cooperating in this case.
To the prosecution's relief, Shanasia's testimony is much stronger.
Shanasia was very impressive to testify in the same room with the two people who killed her boyfriend, watching a courtroom filled with strangers. It was very impressive to see her tell her story under those circumstances.
She did very well in the stand. She was truthful, she was honest, and she did show remorse.
But the defense attempts to undermine Shanasia's testimony with a last-minute surprise witness.
Mason Quayles took the stand and attempted to give his rendition of what happened.
One of the things that the defense had brought up and the argument that they made was, well, you know, why would Mason Quayles commit this crime knowing that he's got this ankle monitor on and the police are going to be able to put him at the scene? The explanation from our standpoint was simply that you can't assume that criminals, when they commit crimes, are always going to be smart. Mason Quayles basically had to concede that he was there because we had the GPS records. His testimony on direct examination was basically that he just wanted to go down to talk to Ishmael Lewis, that there was no plan to rob him, there was no plan to beat him up.
What he did is say that Marcus Garner wasn't there. He provided a name of an individual who had since passed, who had died. It seemed awfully convenient.
The jury agrees. On October 21st, 2022, they find Mason Quayles and Marcus Garner guilty of second-degree murder.
After the verdict was read, they went to immediate sentencing because second-degree murder in the state of Pennsylvania carries a life in prison term. So they were automatically sentenced right there to life in prison.
There were so many emotions flowing through that courtroom at that time.
It was a somber feeling because, you know, not only did Mr. Ishmael Lewis lose his life, Now the families of Mr. Marcus Garner and Mason Quayles are going to lose them for their life.
For her part in the crime, Shanasia Peterson is sentenced to 23 months in prison, plus 8 years of probation.
The day he was murdered, he held his grandchild the first time ever. If she would have got life sentence, then I would have felt a little better, but it ain't really too much you can do. You just, you know what I mean, get your feelings under attack and you just gotta keep it pushing, you know?
Should she have walked away from this with no punishment? Absolutely not. She did do the right things at the end of the day to get her as light of a sentence as she got. And she earned it. But nobody should act in revenge.
It's just so common now, unfortunately, where, you know, somebody gets offended or somebody gets slighted, and instead of resorting to other means right away, they want to pull a gun and shoot somebody.
And I'm a man now, so, you know, I'm not looking for a father figure anymore, but I miss him. I'm thinking about him all the time, and it hurt because when I'm out, somebody always saying, "You look just like your brother." So even when I'm not trying to think about it, you know, I be like, "Dang, my brother gone." When somebody takes somebody you love, it's not easy. So everybody's gonna deal with it in their own way.